What do we? Okay, yeah, you did great.
Greetings. Greetings and welcome to AWHONN Insights, the home for candid nursing conversations. I am Bria Anopise, and we're live again from the 2024 AWHONN Convention in Phoenix, Arizona. Today we're joined by Amber Weiseth from the Board of Directors. She's a research scientist at Harvard T.H. School of Public Health and the director for the Delivery Decisions Initiative at Ariadne Labs. We also have an amazing group of AWHONN fellows who have such incredible energy and perspective. Amy Dagestad, Executive Director of Inpatient Services at Mary Greenlee Medical Center. Margie Boyer, Lead Nurse Consultant with the Florida PQC and Adjunct Professor at Rasmussen University. Nancy Travis, Executive Nurse Consultant with Florida PQC and Not On My Watch Consulting Partner. And also, she's a recipient of the 2024 Award of Excellence in Leadership. Dr. Cheryl Parker, an independently practicing obstetric anesthetist and the director of the Nurse Anesthesia Program at the University of Louisville in Kentucky. Our co-hosts for the day are Jamie Agunsday, a maternal mortality abstraction program coordinator, and Lakisa Ballard, clinical nurse education specialist in L&D and member of the maternal mortality review team of Maryland. They'll be asking Amber and our fellows about leadership. So now I turn the podcast over to Jamie and Lakisa.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. And thank you, ladies, for joining us here today. We're here live in Phoenix. So we're so happy that you decided to come to the AWHONN Convention. So we're going to kick it off with the first question, and I'm going to hit this to Margie. Margie, please tell our listeners when you knew you wanted to be a leader in the perinatal setting, and when and how did you become involved with AWHONN?
Well, I knew I wanted to become a leader with AWHONN when actually I was a new nurse in OB at Ohio State, and I was lucky enough to have two mentors, my nurse manager and my clinical nurse specialist, and both of them told me that they would be honored to take me to my first national convention, which happened to be in Phoenix, Arizona, 1986. It's a full circle, I'll tell you. So I went, and I was able to actually meet board members at the president's party. I'll never forget. I was so inspired. When I went back, I actually knew right then that I wanted to do what I could. So I got real involved at the chapter level in Franklin County. And then someone who was a leader at AWHONN asked if I would like to come work with her in Tampa, Florida at University Community Hospital. And her name is Bonnie Fledchez, and she was my mentor. I have to mention her name. And I knew when I started working with her, she was very involved with some national initiatives with AWHONN, and she just mentored me along. And I knew from then on that I would definitely want to become more involved with AWHONN.
Thank you for that. Okay, so now, Nancy, would you like to answer that question for us?
Thank you. I became involved with AWHONN when I lived in Atlanta, and I was able to go to a meeting and find out what AWHONN was all about. I was serving in a director role, and it was actually a staff nurse that brought me to the AWHONN, my first AWHONN meeting, and her name was Kathy Ivory. And she brought me to AWHONN, and I was working in that hospital for about 2 years. And then I transferred to Florida. And when I moved to Florida, I found out that there was no chapter in my local area. So I took it on myself to start the first AWHONN chapter in Southwest Florida and became very active with the Florida section, and was tapped on the shoulder by Margie Boyer to become even more involved at the state level. And Margie was the Florida section chair at the time. And she mentored me and pushed me along the way and had me do some more work, and actually helped me become the Florida section chair. And the rest has been history. So everything I've done with AWHONN has just snowballed on top of each other. Once you become involved, there's just more opportunities if you really want to be there and be at the table.
That's so true, and so happy that you even had these opportunities. Thank you for that. Amber?
So becoming a leader and getting involved in AWHONN in my sort of career were sort of these two paths that eventually intersected, but it took a little time. I graduated from nursing school in 2003, and between 2005 and 2009, I gave birth to 2 children and adopted 2 others. So my early career, as many nurses are, it was putting food on the table, it was providing me good employment, and it was taking care of my family. And as I got a little breath, got my head above water with those 4 children, I became very, very sort of obsessed with some of the poor clinical outcomes I had been involved in, namely around a hemorrhage. And it was really around system errors that prevented me from actually getting blood products for a patient. During this time, I went to the resource that many nurses go to, and I started Googling hemorrhage and nursing standards and really looking for resources so that I could try to change some of the systems challenges in my hospital. So at the same time, I had some incredible nurse leaders who were very active in AWHONN tap me on the shoulder and talk to me about my potential in leadership and talk to me about AWHONN. And so these sort of pathways collided, and the rest is kind of history. Here I am, obsessed with both. But yeah, that's.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's so nice to have people to uplift you and see gold nuggets, I call, inside of different people to want to bring them up and mentor. So that's awesome.
All right, so thank you everybody for, I just want to welcome everybody, and I'm so glad to be in a room with all of you. I wanted to ask the second question. The second question is going to start with Cheryl, and it's going to be, what are your core values as a leader, and how do they guide your decision-making process?
So yeah, my core values as a leader are really about accountability, probably first and foremost. I think as a leader, you have to certainly be willing to accept responsibility and for your choices and your actions. So I would have to say that would be the first principle of leadership. Secondly, you need to be passionate. So I'm very passionate about obstetric care and maternal health and maternal outcomes, and I have been since I started as a postpartum nurse in 1994. So that passion has continued to drive my leadership and my leadership style. And then of course you need to be resilient, because it's not easy making change, right? And it's not always even the best ideals don't land perfectly. So you have to be ready to keep up the efforts to move things forward.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think that resilience is something that really comes up a lot, especially in the field right now. Definitely a really relevant point. So thank you for making that. I wanted to ask Amber that question next. So what do you think are some of the core values as a leader, and how do they guide your decision-making process in the work that you're doing?
So the first thing that comes to mind is really leaders need to have a really clear sort of mission, a really clear focus on what the goal is. And nurses are really, really good at saying yes, but we tend to say yes to too much. And I think when I think of that leadership quality of being like singularly focused on a horizon line or a point, it means that you do say yes to a lot, but it also means that you need to say no in order to truly achieve your mission. So I think my no's are as important as my yes in the teams and the work that I lead. And second, I do have the privilege of leading an incredible team at Ariadne Labs and working with an incredible board and all of you as leaders. And I think that part of the responsibility and the honor and the joy of being a leader is taking care of those that you work with. And that is, my team cannot do all the work and have the impact if they're not healthy, if they're not taken care of, if they don't feel respected, if they're not challenged. And so my goal and my job is to enable the others around me.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that one of the things that I've really tried to do in my work, and something that I really see with a lot of leaders within nursing, within AWHONN, is they start with why, right? Like they know their purpose and everything that they do. And at some point in your career, you know, you get the opportunity to pick the things that you do. And the strongest leaders I see, they start with their why at the center, and the things that they involve themselves in and pick are focused on what that why is for all of them. And I think that that's a really, really good point, because as we grow within AWHONN, there are so many opportunities and so many things to do, and there's really limited time, because most of us are doing this work for AWHONN, you know, voluntarily, and it's great and it fills all of our cups. But we also have, you know, regular, you know, day jobs and families and all of that. So I think that that's a really important thing. And I think it's also really important because I see nurses in, you know, clinical situations, unfortunately, kind of getting away from their why a little bit. And I think as leaders, it's really important for us to be able to help other people tap into their why. So thank you for bringing that up. Margie, I wanted to hopefully ask you if you could kind of talk a little bit about, you know, the question that I had about some of your core values as a leader and how do they guide your decision-making process. And I will say, before I have Margie come off mute, that we are all sitting in a room together, and it's really easy to look at Margie across the table. So we thank everybody who's listening, just to put it out there, for the patience that y'all are having with us with some of our communications. This is all new for all of us, so thanks. So Margie, toss it over to you. What are your core values as a leader, and how do they guide your decision-making process?
Thank you. I would just echo a lot of the core values discussed already, but one of my foundations, and it probably comes back, you know, I think as a nurse, all of us get the foundational, the theoretical framework. And for me, it was all of these holistic care and putting the patient at the center. My nursing theorist was Imogen King, and I thought, oh, I'll never apply that. But throughout my career, as we look at respectful care, think back to when in training, it's what I've been doing for 40 years now, that always listening to the voice of the patient when I provide the care, when I'm teaching others. As an OPS instructor trainer, I always hit that home, you know, the respectful care of the patient, and for me, evidence-based practice. So in my work with FPQC, I'm able to just really apply all my core values and share that with others. And the next core value I would just like to touch on a little bit is mentoring the next generation of nurses. So important to me. And since I become a fellow, what I've really enjoyed, but so I just loved, is that people now say, oh, will you mentor me to become a fellow? And it just touches my heart. I'm just like, absolutely. I would love for everyone to be a fellow. So yeah, those are some of my core values. I also, people tell me I'm very creative. I want you, when you learn, to make things your own. A curiosity for constantly learning, and very passionate about what I do.
Thank you, Margie. That is awesome. And we know that, you know, especially with all of us being leaders in the room, it takes a lot. So refilling our own cup, attending AWHONN, having a mentor, taking a vacation, knowing your limits, knowing when to say no as well, will also help with resiliency. We use that word a lot, but making sure that we're applying it to ourselves first before we're pouring into people's cups. So this is a really good conversation. So we're going to go to the next question, and this is for Amy. So what type of committees have you joined through AWHONN? And do you have an AWHONN roadmap that prepared you to become a fellow?
So my AWHONN roadmap is actually something I'm really proud of, and I want to share with you guys kind of my journey just so you can see how many things there are out there. And this is just a few things that AWHONN has to offer. Obviously, there's so much more, but in 2008, I became an educator. And when I became an educator, they said, okay, since you're going to become an educator, you need to teach fetal monitoring. And so I took a class with a mentor of mine who's Julie Zimmerman. I got to give her a shout out. And she said, well, if you're going to become an AWHONN instructor, then you also need to become an AWHONN member. So joined AWHONN in 2008 and then was an instructor from 2008 to 2015. During that time, I also got my certification in inpatient obstetrics. I became a designated fetal monitoring instructor during that time too. And then in 2018, I decided to join our Iowa AWHONN chapter. I became the North Central. I was actually a co-chapter leader at that time. And then in 2019 became an emerging leader. In 2020 became the Award of Excellence in Leadership recipient. Was on the annual convention programming committee. I became an Award of Excellence judge, and then I was on the task force awards redesign. And then in 2022 became the Iowa AWHONN section chair. I was actually late to that meeting, and when I got on, they said, and we have volunteered you, Amy. So. But it really has been awesome, and I'm really, really glad that I was late to that meeting, because if I wasn't, I don't know if I would have become the next Iowa AWHONN section chair. So I also am the AIM AWHONN State Nurse Leader Representative. I am on our District 4 SAC committee, and then on the AWHONN Awards committee as well. And then, of course, in 2023, I was inducted as an AWHONN Fellow. So that's kind of my journey through, and there are so many things out there for you to do. I also published in Nursing for Women's Health in 2017. And then I've had the opportunity, I actually counted up yesterday, I've done 30 poster presentations at various conferences, state, local, national, international, and I believe 5 of those were with AWHONN. So many opportunities and things that you can do within AWHONN to grow yourself as a leader, as a nurse, as a staff nurse, as a mentor, to really help you become better.
I want to add on something to that question, since you've done a lot of things, and it could be someone listening who maybe is trying to figure out how to get involved, or, saying, wow, publishing. What would be 2 first steps that you would say to someone who would like to be more involved in those things, even if they don't have a mentor? What are 2 things you would suggest on your roadmap?
Ooh, I would say start by dipping your toes in. Pick one thing within AWHONN, whether that's a poster, applying to, be on a committee. Take that leap. Really doing one thing is what really grew my AWHONN adventure, if you will. So take that first, dip your toe in, take that first step, and then tap somebody on the shoulder. If you're at this AWHONN convention and you've never been to one and you have questions, come find us, tap us on the shoulder, say, hey, what did you do? I would love to help anybody who's interested in doing a poster presentation. I would love to help you and help you get started writing that abstract. I always say within Iowa, we have an Iowa Organization for Nursing Leaders, and all posters are accepted. That's the perfect spot to start, because you're automatically accepted and there's not that defeat that you don't get to present or be selected.
Thank you. And I think Jamie wants to add something to that as well.
I did. I think that that's an excellent point, because I think that a lot of the leaders in this room, and I know for me also, that a lot of this is about stepping outside of your comfort zone. And Dr. Kamara Jones says that the edge of our discomfort is actually our growing edge. And so I think that part of my road in AWHONN has just been putting myself out there and doing things that scare me a little bit. Like the first time I ever went to AWHONN on the Hill, which Nancy has done 7 times now. The first time I ever showed up into that room and walked into, the halls of Congress were terrifying. And then this year was the 4th time. I did it again this year, and it was the 4th time. And I got to lead a bunch of New Jersey nurses and bring them with me and say, this is it. And you just start to become more comfortable. But taking that first first step can be really, really scary. And so I think that, just putting yourself out there and pushing yourself beyond like the edge of your comfort is just how we grow. And it's, there are so many opportunities, like Amy said, in AWHONN to be able to do that. So thanks for the little sidebar, Lakisa.
Yes, and Nancy?
Up, changed it.
Just start back over. Just start.
Okay. One of those people is my nursing professional development specialist, who I put on a AWHONN research. I tipped her off and told her it was something she should do. And she came to convention that year and had to speak in front of a symposium group of 300 people. And she probably has never forgiven me for that. But she's a great speaker now. But so it's just things like that, is you see a spark in somebody else and you can suggest that to them. There's always opportunities on the AWHONN website.
Thank you. Thank you. There are. So you guys go to the website, tap a shoulder, make a phone call. There is someone who can help to lead you to something that you may be interested in. So I'm going to roll this question to Cheryl. So Cheryl, what type of committees have you joined through AWHONN, and do you have an AWHONN roadmap that prepared you to become a fellow?
So much like Amy, I sort of dipped into it in the beginning. I don't know that it was necessarily a roadmap. It just, I started following a path, and then it just kept leading me in different directions and on down the road. And I was fortunate enough to be part of the first fellows. So I can't really say that there was an actual map to fellows, but when I saw that there was an opportunity, I jumped on it. I started out as getting my RNC in oh my gosh, I think it was 1997 when I did that. So that was the first thing. I was working as a labor and delivery nurse, and I was also on the high-risk delivery team, and I kept asking, how do we know these things? Where's, looking for protocols and trying to understand my role more, and everybody kept saying, well, AWHONN says this, AWHONN says that, and I was like, what is this AWHONN? So then I became an AWHONN member and then got my RNC right away. And then from there, met some people and joined the science writing team. That was the one of the, just again, someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, I think you might be interested in this. So I did that. I had the opportunity to be part of the anesthesia and analgesia publication for AWHONN. I joined the public policy committee and just really had such an amazing time. I was on that committee for 2 years and met Robin Diora, and she started talking about New Jersey created this Maternal Health Awareness Day, and I was like, how did you do that? And so she told me a little, bit of how they started that process, and I said, I think I can do that. And so then I went and started the Maternal Health Awareness Day in Kentucky, and Kentucky became the fifth state in the nation. We followed behind New Jersey to establish Maternal Health Awareness Day, and it was really cool. I never imagined that I would go knocking on the senator's door and saying, hey, I need you to approve this resolution for me, but that's what I did. And I think I got that strength from the people that I met in AWHONN, and they kept checking in with me and saying, how's it going? What are you doing? What do you need from us? And it was just an amazing process to see that happen. And then I joined Emerging Leaders after the Public Policy Committee. I was like, okay, there was again an opportunity, an invitation. Someone said, I think you'd be good at this. And I was like, I'm not so sure, but I did it. and that was probably the most amazing experience. I was an Emerging Leader in 2018, so right before you, Amy. And then, like I said, the next thing that came around, and I've also been published. I sent a publication. I had a very crazy, let's say crazy, very life-changing experience with a patient, and then that led to writing a case report, which got published in Joggin, and then it wasn't long after that I got a phone call to do a podcast about lower extremity nerve injuries. So I talked about that, and then the invitation to become a fellow, which I couldn't pass up. All of that's led to so many different opportunities for me as well in other aspects of my career. So lots to do.
That's awesome. And even when it comes to going to Capitol on the Hill, I have not done that yet. Hopefully I'll be able to do that, of course, next year. However, so many of our senators and legislation, they need our expertise. So to be able to say, hey, I have this idea, we have this idea that we know that will help produce best outcomes. I think sometimes the hesitancy is, and it is intimidation, like, oh, it's the senator, but they're really dependent upon us to make those things happen or bring them to light. So thank you. That is good. So AWHONN on the Hill. Definitely that will be a goal. Okay, so Jamie is going to have our next question.
I am, but I wanted to say to Cheryl first, I think that, when we get into spaces like this, we realize how small the AWHONN world and the maternal child health world is, because I actually work with Robin in New Jersey. She's my CEO of the organization that I work for, and she has done not only so much for women and families in New Jersey and in the maternal mortality world, just advocating for patients and families, but also for AWHONN and for mentorship. She's definitely somebody who has, taken me under her wing and really guided me and so many of us. So again, it's another plug for just mentorship and how important it can be to bring up future nurses. But Lakisa, you are completely right. And I think that, I see nurses being excluded from so many spaces because I do work in maternal mortality. And, while our physician and midwife and doula colleagues are fantastic, I see so much effort being placed and attention being placed on them as people who can deal with the maternal mortality crisis and everything. And a lot of times they skip over nurses because they think, oh, well, you take orders from everybody else. And I think that they often look beyond us, and it's really our job to kind of like put our foot in the door and say, no, we need to be in the room and at the table too, because we have really valuable experience and so many things to offer and so many stories to tell, not only just about our patients, but our own experiences. And that's something that I experienced when I've gone to Capitol Hill multiple times, is that you're totally right, they do want to hear from us. And it's really valuable for them to get the nursing perspective and the nursing point of view. So I wanted to switch gears real fast and just ask a question about leadership and success. I'm going to start with Amber, and then I'm going to go to Cheryl. So I wanted to see, Amber, can you talk about leadership and how do you measure your success as a leader? How do you know that you're succeeding as a leader? What makes you feel successful?
It's a great question. I wish I had like I have these 10 questions and I look at them and evaluate them every year, but I don't know that it's so quantitative as that. I think the longer that I've been a leader, the more I realize that it's not about knowing everything. It's actually about being more comfortable with not knowing and being willing to ask more questions. And so leadership comes with just holding space for the not knowing and the willingness to be responsible for being brave and dealing with whatever the outcome that comes from that bravery. When I I guess when I evaluate my leadership or when I ask my team how I'm doing, I tend to think in these three spaces. So out forward, like you said, Jamie, being uncomfortable, like, am I being uncomfortable? Am I challenging myself every year, every season? Are there things I'm doing that make me go, like, can I really do this? And we should all have those spaces that we lean into all the time. It's a good space. And then I try to think about my current reality. Does my time match up with my priorities? So this is a lot of calendar management, but to be a successful leader, you have to make sure that your calendar and your choices are matching up with your North Star. And then I look back, or I look to my team and think, are they growing? Are every year, are they elevating in their leadership? And if they're doing that, then to me, that means I'm being a successful leader for them.
Sure. I'm not really sure, I would say, how to measure success as a leader either. Sometimes I'm not even sure that I'm actually leading. I just happen to be in the front, and there's some people behind me kind of pushing me. So I don't know if you can call that leading when you're just being shoved along. So, I would say that, you know, to echo what Amber said, to be just willing to accept responsibility and accountability, to look at something and say, this shouldn't be this way and we need to improve it, and then being willing to stick your neck out and say, and stand up and say, we need to change this, you know, and hopefully at some point they'll start listening to you. And then when you see more and more people standing beside you and doing the same thing, or coming to you and saying, hey, you know, I'm ready to take this next step, or I want to move in this direction, can you write me a letter of recommendation, and will you support me? And that's when, you know, I think that you're actually at least opening some doors for people. If we can call that leading, then that's leading. So.
Yes, measurement of leadership. You know, we all have to take a pause, right? We take a pause and reflect. And as we do our goals yearly and with our team, and even being transparent of what goals they would like to see for and are we making those? So those metrics, and like you said, sometimes it can't necessarily be quantitative, but reflective in how your team is contributing to the goal and how you're making your mark. So I love those answers. All right, so this next question is going to talk about things we do outside of AWHONN, not like we don't have a lot going on in AWHONN, because we do. We have a lot of things going on. All right, so this I'm going to shoot to Amy first. All right, so what other community and leadership committees do you belong to outside of AWHONN?
So I got involved at the state level within Iowa and our Iowa Organization for Nursing Leadership. Actually got tapped on the shoulder for this, and someone said, "Hey, we think you'd be great for this, and maybe be the secretary treasurer too." And so joined that, became the secretary treasurer pretty quickly after joining. And then from there, I actually submitted a poster to the American Organization for Nursing Leadership, so the national organization, and was accepted for a poster presentation. So became a member of AONL as well. A couple years back, our Great Iowa Nurse program was no longer going to be supported by the organization it was supported by. And so a couple of us from the organization I work for Mary Greeley, said, "Hey, we'd love to take on this Great Iowa Nurses program." Asked our CNO, "Hey, are you okay with this?" And he said, "Absolutely, go for it." So we have actually redone, if you will, the Great Iowa Nurses program. It used to be 100 Great Iowa Nurses, and now it's Great Iowa Nurses, and I'm the board president. So if you are looking to donate some money to a really great organization, let me know. We could really use anything anyone wants to give. And if you want to become involved in Iowa too, what a great organization. So, okay, that's my plug for Great Iowa Nurses. Healthy Birthday Inc., I'm a medical advisory board for them member. And then recently, Drake University has started a nursing program. And so I became a nursing advisory board member, as well as Iowa State University, part of their nursing advisory committee. So I try to stay involved as much as I can, obviously, with AWHONN, but I also like to be involved in things outside of AWHONN within our state, and then try to get involved in other national organizations too.
Thank you for that. It's very important for us to get involved or be somewhat involved outside of OB, because we know a lot of our patients, especially, let's say, community resources for them, the emergency department, ICU, national public health is a big contributor to what happens in maternal health. So I want to switch this question over to Nancy. Nancy, what other committees are you actively involved in outside of AWHONN?
Okay, thank you. I am also involved with the Chamber of Commerce in our area. I am actually on the board for the Chamber, and I've been doing that for the last several years. I like being involved in the Chamber of Commerce because I get to know what's out there in our community and what resources we have that can help our patients and families that we see. So I'm able to bring things back. I help host the Women's Leadership Conference with them, and that's fun. I'm also involved with some organizations one of them that Amy's involved with, the Healthy Birthday, which is the Count the Kicks organization, and I work with them on their medical advisory board. And then the other opportunities that have come up have basically been from AWHONN. So I'm on their medical advisory board with them, and Huggies actually has asked me to come consult with them on some projects from time to time. So they had a nursing advisory board several years ago and asked me to do a video for them. So since I do focus on the baby part of things a little bit more than the OB part of things, because I started out as a pediatric nurse, but so that was something. So opportunities come because they see you as a leader. And so no matter where it is, and also the Florida Perinatal Quality Collaborative, I'm on the steering committee, and that has been an opportunity that has been handed down to me from AWHONN. So it's just different opportunities and different ways to be involved with members in your community.
Before we add the next person to answer that, I wanted to say that one of the things I find hilarious about nursing is that the math ain't mathin' when it comes to our careers, because you can have, I've been a nurse for 10 years and I've had 17 years worth of jobs, because what I have found is not only do we overschedule ourselves, but we love some of the things that we do so much that we want to do all of the things, and we often will do them all at once. And so I know at one point I had a main job and then 2 side gigs, and I think that we all do that, and I think that that's just hilarious that it's happening in this room too. So thanks, Lakisa, for letting me throw that in.
Yes, and before we end this podcast, I have to ask what everybody does for fun, because there's a lot of things that's heavy on our shoulders, but we're going to have to get around that to the end, because I think we have to also include things that we love to do that has nothing to do with nursing, to help, have a little breathing time. So go ahead, Amy. You had something you wanted to say?
I do. One thing I did not mention that I promised myself I would is that Every Woman, Every Baby. Anybody who donates to Every Woman, Every Baby, you are making a huge difference. Another great organization, if you don't want to donate to Great Iowa Nurses, donate to Every Woman, Every Baby. Go out there, because all those dollars are given back to the people. They are helping people go to conferences, scholarships, NOAA, POA, everything you can think of within AWHONN. So please, if you have ever donated to Every Woman, Every Baby, or you're thinking about it, remember that you are making a huge difference, and you are a part of that as well.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. Thank you very much, because I have been a recipient of a scholarship a few years ago for AWHONN from Every Mom, Every Baby. So thank you for mentioning that. It does work. It does. They really do give back. So Cheryl, we're going to throw this question to you.
So what committees am I involved in outside of AWHONN? Well, After my experience in becoming a fellow, and well, I guess really it started after Emerging Leaders, but definitely after I became a fellow, I actually got invited to join the Kentucky Parenting Equality Collaborative. I was appointed, if you will, to be the Kentucky AIM state representative, but I'm also involved in the anesthesia world. Try to be involved with that as much as I can too. So with the American Association of Nurse Anesthesiologists, so AANA, I'm working with their education director to develop some credentialing for OB anesthesia, and also, I am the Kentucky Region 2 Director for nurse anesthetists. So, but probably my most favorite thing to be involved in outside of AWHONN is my frequent trips up to Minnesota where I get to hang out with my grandkids. So that's like, I squeeze that in all the time. Have been known to skip out, on a few other heavy obligations just to play some online video games with the 6-year-olds, so. But it's really been amazing how AWHONN has really opened the door. I don't think I would be the director of a nurse anesthesia program had I not started out as an emerging leader in 2018, I really think that set me on a path to do bigger and grander things, not greater, because there's nothing greater than being here at AWHONN, and I love it. Obviously, keep coming back.
Thank you for that. So Amber, we'll have you answer this question as well.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to ask a question to all my colleagues, but don't look at me, keep looking at your screen. When you were a bedside nurse, please raise your hand if you ever created a workaround. I probably just need 10 hands up. Okay, so we often label these as workarounds, and there's like a negative connotation to them. But something I've been learning in this past year, which I'll lead to my outside activities, but is that nurses are some of the best innovators. They're creative problem solvers. They're extremely committed to solving whatever problem's ahead of them, and fierce advocates for patients. So what I've been learning over this past year is that the previous frame of workaround really needs to be shifted to innovators, designers, entrepreneurs. And in this past year, one of the areas I've been challenged and really been fortunate to participate in is an accelerator program for tech startups at the Harvard Business School. So over the past 6 months, I've been mentored. I've had an incredible group of individuals that have helped me to actually launch and start a new company. As of a couple weeks ago, I'm now apparently a CEO and entrepreneur, which is nothing I ever thought I would be, but I am really good at workarounds. And so a little bit of shifting and reframing has opened up a whole new world to me. And I guess it answers part of my leadership question of this is what I'm doing that brings me discomfort and challenge. But it's also something that's opening new pathways and new opportunities going forward.
That is awesome. We do a lot of consuming instead of doing, a lot of creativity. We do have $1 million idea. I think about the JADA and how those two graduate level students at San Luis Obispo, which I used to live, I did a travel contract there years ago. And I said, wow, they're not even in nursing, but they had a project and they said, we want to solve a problem. We solve problems all the time. I always say that I'm one of the professional problem solvers, as a clinical educator, but many of us are. So we're really turning the needle with that. So encourage the people who are listening. You have that $1 million idea, jump onto it. All right. So Jamie?
Yes. I think what I wanted to add to that is I think that I love what Amber said and what Lakisa said, because I think that so many times when you're an inpatient nurse, You have things that are handed down to you in terms of policies and procedures and the way that you want things, the way that things are supposed to be done, or the way that we are told that they are done. And we are left out. And so this is kind of a plug for, like, you know, shared governance, and for nursing innovation, and for supporting that as nurse leaders when we are in leadership positions at the bedside, is going directly to nurses and saying, hey, we have this problem. How do you think that we can solve it? What are the best ways that we can come up with? Because nurses have the answers. You know, we know how to do things. We know that it's what's going to work best within the framework of the, you know, the timing and time management and the patient care and the workflow, and, you know, just like basic things like where things are put. I think that, you know, when we go directly to nurses and say to them, you know, we need to fix something, let's come up with a solution, and we trust you to be able to come up with a solution to fix something. So I'm going to pause for.
I wanted to segue in something that Jamie just said, that even just something small as where things are. A lot of times, and what we have seen, myself, we have nurse leaders who can, on the opposite side, say, well, it's the way it's always been done. It's been such a deterror for people who may have a great idea, especially with our younger nurses, or even nurses who are experienced, to say, well, it falls on deaf ears. So we definitely encourage, you know, everyone who's in a leadership position to really have the bandwidth to have the ear to listen, even if it's something that small, which is actually really big, because they're the foot soldiers on the floor. And even when it comes to an idea, and even if it's nothing you've ever heard of in your 20, 30 years of nursing, to be able to have the ear to listen and not be so committed to tradition, because sometimes that's where we can get stuck. So sorry, I just want to add that real quick. That was good.
Yes, thank you for adding that. That's totally true. Lakisa's sitting right next to me, so I keep looking at it. Okay, so the next question, I actually wanted to, I don't have anybody specific to aim this at, so I was hoping everybody could just tell me briefly, and I'll just, you know, kind of pop around the room, and I'm going to start with Amber because she's sitting right next to me. So it's not that hard of a question, I don't think, so surprise. How do you stay inspired and motivated for yourself and your team?
Stay inspired. Well, I don't feel like that's hard. I don't know, maybe because I'm crazy obsessed about improving healthcare for birthing people and families in this country. But I guess a discipline that keeps me really focused is, I serve and I do research and I do health system innovation. And so I'm not at the bedside, like I was years ago. So I think I draw from that well of stories. Like I keep those stories. I know, Jamie, you're such a good storyteller and bringing to life, patients' voices that maybe still aren't here. And I have those patients that I keep in my heart and in my brain, and I draw back to them for inspiration. But I also spend a lot of time working with clinicians and doing coaching and reviewing data. And I think for me, reading those patient surveys, looking at the data, hearing the stories from clinicians, it's so motivating in the good and the bad to keep doing the work that we're doing and staying focused. And especially with nurses, when we work and our team works closely with a lot of hospital leaders, it's such a hard job. Those of you that are listening that are nurse leaders or nurse managers, it's such a hard job. You have impossible constraints and challenges, and yet such a critical job to support your staff as well as the safety for patients. And I feel honored when we get to work with you and invest in you and encourage that next group of leaders. So I think I rambled a little bit, Jamie, I apologize, but those are some of the things I do to stay inspired. And CrossFit, because it keeps me sane.
Yes, well, you didn't mention that I bumped into you into the gym last night. Yep. I wanted to toss that to Margie next. Margie, what helps you stay inspired to continue to do this work?
So what inspires me is I'm fortunate enough to work with 100% of the birthing hospitals in Florida now. It's a Florida statute. So I have coaching calls almost every day at noontime. And I have a group of coach mentors. Nancy Travis is one of them. I have nurse physician dyads on every call, and they take a group of hospitals. But I'm fortunate enough to be on all the calls. And we have so many, we try small tests of change. Again, the nurse is the expert. It's just inspirational stories, how we have an aim we're shooting for, and then we'll do a small test of change. And they'll report back, and I'm so inspired hearing the nurses and physicians working together as a team to improve patient care, and then also having the patient voices on there as well. What also inspires me is we collect patient saves and we publish them on our FPQC website. And when I hear about some of these saves by some of our secondary drivers, some of our strategies, just like doing a vital sign check before discharge, that the difference that has made, just little things like that, that's what keeps me inspired. Just hearing all the stories from all the hospitals and the great everyone out there on still providing the direct patient care, and just hearing these patient saves really inspires me.
Nancy?
Muted. There's too many buttons. Too many buttons on this computer. Still muted? Are you sure? I don't have anything else I can press.
I can hear her.
You can hear me?
I see the mute symbol over your name.
Me too.
All right. Is it going now?
No, it's still there.
Oh my goodness. It's showing on my computer.
Can I toss it to you? You go.
Okay.
And then come
It's
back.
going now? Okay. All right. What keeps me inspired is staying up to date on educational opportunities, and there's so much education that you can do out there. So I watch these stories and then I share it with others. And by sharing it with others, especially new nurses, new to practice nurses and students, that keeps me inspired, because I want the world to be a better place for I don't have any more children having babies, but I have 21 grandchildren, and those 21 grandchildren are going to start having babies, and I want it to be safe for each and every one of them as they start their families. And I want it to be safe for everybody that I interact with out there in the public, that I see when I'm grocery shopping or interacting in my community. I want it to be safe. So that keeps me coming back and wanting to make things better.
That is a lot of grandbabies, Nancy. And I see them on Facebook because I'm Facebook friends with Nancy. I'm like, that's a lot of grandbabies. Amy, what keeps you inspired?
Something Nancy said inspired me, but making the world a better place and really seeing the good in people. I get very inspired hearing people's stories. As the director of maternal child services in my previous position, I got to round on our staff nurses. And one of the things that we asked during rounding was, tell me about your best patient story in the last month. And the things that people told me, they were so heartwarming. I got to help a patient that was 9 centimeters for 4 hours, and we did spinning babies, and we brought that baby down and she got to deliver vaginally. We followed her birth plan exactly what she wanted. That's what inspires me. I want to see people succeed and do what they love, really like what Nancy said, to make the world a better place.
Excellent. Thank you. Cheryl.
Well, I would say a lot of the same things that everyone else has already. I would say the things that keep me inspired are similar to what everyone else has said. Seeing positive patient outcomes. I'm still practicing clinically 1 day a week, and while I'm running the program, so it's hard for me to even think about walking away from the labor and delivery unit because I still feel very invested and want to be there and see those positive outcomes. My daughter-in-law actually actually had a placenta previa and delivered at 30 weeks. And just hearing her story kept me involved, because hearing, how her things went, and our granddaughter experienced a PVL as at an ischemic event that happened during the process of the delivery. That was motivation to keep me involved and keep me saying, what can be done better? What can we do to improve these outcomes and not have these issues? And then probably the one thing that's keeping me really inspired this year is there's a nurse here at AWHONN this year. It is her first year at convention. I trained her when she came to labor and delivery, and not only is she finally here at AWHONN after all the years of me saying, you need to come, you'd be so motivated, but this year she actually took over as nurse manager on the busiest labor and delivery unit in Kentucky. They do about 6,000 deliveries a year. And to see Lisa make that transition and move her career forward, and then finally got her here to AWHONN, that's motivation. So.
Well, welcome, Lisa, for the first time at convention, and to all the first-time convention attendees. We're all clapping. I think that if you asked everybody in this room, some of whom have been to convention more than 20 times, I think, Margie, you've got your 20-time ribbon. I think that everybody could tell you something about their first convention, because it's so memorable. And this is only my third, so I get really inspired by seeing everybody in this room and people who just keep coming back for more. I wanted to make sure that Lakisa got a chance to answer this question too. So Lakisa, what keeps you inspired in the work that you're doing?
Thank you for that. I tell people that I wake up inspired. With so many foundational principles that people have poured into me, and even with me starting as a candy striper back in '97 in a small labor and delivery unit in South Carolina. Have had people pour into me since the beginning. But what would throw wood into the fire is when I see the light bulb go off with my nurses and things click and say, or I can be walking down the hallway. It may be something happen in the room. I'm just listening on the outside of the room, and I hear great close loop communication and them involving the patient, in emergencies. So that what inspires me, because though I'm mostly inpatient, in labor and delivery, our goal, especially with me being on the state mortality review team, we see so many maternal deaths that we review once a month. We review 4 a month for the state. We make recommendations to the CDC. So we know that those a part of that definitely happens, of course, in the hospital. So we want to make sure that we're doing our part to decrease those numbers and eventually eliminate those numbers. So that what lights my fire when I really see the light bulb goes off with our OB team. But thank you for letting me answer that question.
Of course. And I'm going to answer it too, because I think that, I get inspired by the connections that I've made through AWHONN and through, other nurses, and we just continue to check in with each other. And I think that one of the things that I've learned is that when you function and kind of work from your why and in your purpose, then you kind of talk about all of those things a lot like I do. You start to build people around you who think the same things and believe the same things, and you all sort of I don't want to say spiral, but you all build on each other and lift each other up. And so I think that inspires me, is just being in community with so many other goal-oriented and goal-driven nurses. And I wanted to add a little plug in, Lakisa, since you were talking about maternal mortality and the CDC. If anybody is here at convention, tomorrow we will be having a nurse excellence session at 9 a.m. where the CDC will be talking about maternal mortality. I will be up there speaking with them, and we will be involving a patient advocate, a patient storyteller, Brianna Henderson from Let's Talk PPCM, who's going to be talking about her personal experience with peripartum cardiomyopathy. So we would love to see you there. Bria, what keeps you inspired?
OMG, I was not ready to answer the question. But I will just say, right now, you all are inspiring me because you took the time to be here. And a few months ago, this was an idea that I had no idea how it was even going to come together. So the fact that you thought it would be important enough to be here to speak to our members and to our listeners, and you set aside the time for me, I'm grateful, but that's also motivation to keep going and to continue doing this again, because we have 25,000 plus members, and that means that's how many stories we have to tell. And each of you have different communities and lives that you're touching. So there's always more to give. And so that's part of why I stay inspired.
Well, thank you, Bria. We appreciate you because you are amazing and continue to lead us with the podcast and these voices. It's very important to hear a variety of voices, so we thank you for that. As we are coming to a close, one of the things I wanted to say to everybody is, though we're so passionate, we continue to be passionate with obstetrics, really mingling outside of OB. I'll say something that happened recently. Back in April, I was able to speak at the State Maryland Conference for Emergency Nurses Association to talk about preeclampsia and pregnancy as one of their speakers for their conference. And it was really good. But one of the things I will say, as our patients become more high risk and we start doing these things, for us to really get outside of our box. So as we bring people into AWHONN who may not be AWHONN members or have a background in OB, but they are affiliated with maternity care. One of my mentors is an ICU nurse leader, along with my two other mentors who are OB. So I say that to say that, pharmacy, anesthesia, intensivists, ICU nurses, educators, ED, all these things really help us to collaborate and for us to find solutions for people who are integrating with patients before, during, and after pregnancy. So I just want to encourage everybody with that notion. It's very important.
Okay. Oh my gosh. It has truly been an honor for me to be in the room with all of you, Amber, Amy, Margie, Nancy, Cheryl, Jamie, and Lakisa. Each of you has a personal story, and you followed your passion of caring and advocating for moms, birthing people, newborns, and families for many years. This conversation is important to share what you value, how you prioritize, your growth as leaders, and your dedication to preparing the next generation, the various opportunities you've taken advantage of, and how the paths to your success aren't all straight lines, but crooked roads that have led to greatness. You all are inspiring, and I hope our AWHONN colleagues take advantage of connecting with you while we're here in Phoenix and even after. Thank you all for staying with us and listening again today, being patient with us as we learn a new way to connect with you. Thank you for sharing this time and space with us. Don't forget to tell a colleague or a friend how much you've enjoyed this podcast episode. You can find us at awhonn.org/podcast to read our guests' full bios, download some of the resources that they shared today. You can also rewatch again on YouTube. Thank you so much. Be well and stay safe.